Welcome to In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard. We want to do something kind of special. We're going to talk about Thanksgiving particularly, or the holidays in general maybe, and just talk about kind of what our memories are of our older family members, as you know, my grandparents and Spencer's grandparents, and talk a little bit about kind of how things changed over time, so we could try to start just the conversation about how you start thinking about making sure that you take care of your loved ones as they get older. So Spencer, tell me about what your first memories are of your holidays, Thanksgiving.
Sure. So basically, between the two sides, my dad's side are more rural based. They're down in Perryville, Missouri. So my first memories of Thanksgiving would be driving down to the farm an hour and 10 minutes outside of St. Louis. And my grandparents would have quite the feast. Everyone would be more of a potluck. People would bring in things, but no, my grandparents always went, all out with the Thanksgiving turkey and the green bean casserole and the pies and things like that. And so that's a fond memory. And then on my mom's side, the relatives would exchange Thanksgiving. So it'd be between the aunts and uncles, but my grandparents were still very much involved. But I will say right around the age of 10 is when things kind of started shifting. That's when, at least the grandparents on my dad's side, they just could not maintain the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. And so by my teenage years, it was just given to my aunts and uncles. And so I did notice a shift in that for sure.
Yeah, it was kind of the same for me. My grandmother on my dad's side, we typically took turns either doing it at one of my uncle's houses, and so my grandmother never really hosted it, but she was very involved with cooking and everything. And then on my mom's side, it was very different. So she had like 1,400 acres out in South Central Kansas. Wow. She was a rancher. My biological grandfather had passed away when I was really young, and she had gotten remarried at this point. But she kind of kept everything together. Like, she kept all the kids coming, and she did a lot of cooking, and she was kind of like. She kept her own chickens. She behead her own chickens and pluck them and make really home cooked meals that were just phenomenally amazing. But over time, as I got older, things kind of transitioned to a point where they just couldn't quite keep up with it.
Yeah.
And you were saying that. You had aunts and uncles that were kind of jumping in. Did they still have it at Grandma's house, or did they take it to their house?
So it moved. So by my teenage years, Thanksgiving, at least from the farm on my dad's side, shifted to Festus, and then they'd rotate between there and St. Louis. So my aunts and uncles would have it because they just want to take that burden off, and all the grandparents had to do is just show up, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But I could sense that it felt like a loss for them, because that was like their thing, like bring the whole family together, the kids, the grandkids, come down on the farm, country cooking, just like you were saying in Kansas. But yeah, when they lost it, I could just sense a sense of like pride lost. Yeah. It was definitely a different type of atmosphere.
Yeah. The thing is that, and I know there's lots of people out there right now that are kind of in this weird transition point where it's like right on the edge of things, and they're not really sure, what the next steps are. But I really want to encourage people to consider, looking into home care potentially if somebody's wanting to stay in their home, and getting extra support, so especially during the holidays, because it can be very stressful, shopping and cooking and different things like that. And sometimes utilizing, a caregiver to come in the home and just kind of help give support can really go a long way, especially if relatives live a long way away.
Absolutely. Really, I wish we would have done that. On my mom's side, my grandpa kind of became more reclusive. He was really hard of hearing, and so he felt very isolated over the holidays. We did the best we could to go visit him, but he would never really show up to holidays, at least in my late teens and my early 20s. And toward the end there, after grandma passed, he just stayed to himself. And, I remember my mom and her two sisters were talking about home care and eventually hospice, and he just continued to refuse. And I think he just didn't want to have that difficult conversation. I think he was just very independent, even though he needed help. And so Looking back at it, I think the family would have gotten through it a lot better before he passed if he would have got on to home care and eventually hospice with those 6 months remaining. So that is a life lesson learned for sure.
Yeah.
At least my dad's parents, they just kind of passed. One had a heart attack, one died in their sleep. So they were very independent, and they were very healthy. But my mom's parents definitely went through a lot of health issues, and I just think they were stubborn. And I hate to call them out, but just looking back at it, it just put a lot of stress on my family.
Yeah.
And I really wish that they would just open up to home care.
Yeah, I try to put myself in their shoes a lot of times, and just even if somebody said, "Hey, I need you tomorrow to start using a walker every day," and I was thinking, that'd be tough for me. Like, it would be hard for me to make that transition and to give things up, giving up a vehicle, letting somebody come and be with you and kind of feel like you're being sat or whatever. And that those types of things, unfortunately, I think some people have that in their mind. It's going to be something negative.
Paranoia.
But then they end up really liking their caregiver and really, it ends up being almost like a companion. And so that's kind of the feedback that we've gotten over the years, is that people kind of resist it at first, but then once they make that transition, they really enjoy it. And so often, that caregiver can remind them to take their medicines on a regular basis, can make sure that they're eating.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's just the little day-to-day things that really can make a huge difference, that somebody's way healthier and they're not as frail. We had caregivers that would actually, do home exercise programs with their clients, and they'd read letters, they'd help them write letters, they'd help them go buy presents and go wrap presents. So they were really super supportive through the holiday season. And once the individual understood that it wasn't just that you needed somebody, it wasn't babysitting, it was really just having a helping hand and some encouragement. Sometimes they needed somebody to make sure that they were taking those medicines and eating that food and doing a little bit of exercise and getting out, and just like you were mentioning with your grandfather getting isolated. That isolation is very damaging to a lot of older folks. And so if somebody's alone in their home, just know as a family member, if there are ways to try to mitigate that by, even if it's not a home care aid, but just some volunteering or something to where you can get somebody available for that person, it's really going to make a huge difference in the health of that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like it was very fear-based. I feel like he just didn't trust other people, strangers in the home. And I feel like if we had kind of walked him through that and explained what home care really was, and of course, then eventually hospice, I think he'd have been more comfortable with that. My Aunt Kathy, she is a nurse, so she was able to take care of him at times. But I remember this back in 2020, right before COVID struck the United States, toward the end there, or toward the end for his life, that it just took such a huge toll on the family. They had to get away from work and they had to stay overnights with him. And it's just like, why couldn't we have gotten professional help for him so the family wouldn't be stressed out and financially it was still viable? So looking back at that, it was definitely a learning lesson for my family.
Yeah. Well, this Thanksgiving season, I want you to know I'm grateful for you, Spencer.
Likewise,
and
absolutely.
I'm grateful that we have such a great audience and that we get that opportunity to learn so much new things about home care, and to really prop up some of the local providers that are in this area that may not have gotten as much press if we haven't try to put to introduce them to our audience. And I think it's a great opportunity for us as we move forward in this next year to really find new and creative ways to try to help people out there take care of their older family.
Absolutely. Education is so key, and we're here to help you make those great decisions.
Well, from In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And we'd love to stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at In Good Company Elder Care Podcast.
You can also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IGC Pod. and on TikTok at IGC Elder Care Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard. I'm John Ray, and I've been joined by my amazing co-host, Spencer Ernst. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alex Wallace, for helping bring this show to life. Until next time, take care, and remember, you are always in good company.